Subscribe for the latest news in hip hop and entertainment. Hit that notification and have a good day.
I talked to True Life recently after he got out of prison for being involved in that murder. And he told me something interesting. He said that it is impossible to be a gangster and a rapper at the same time.
It is.
And he said that he tried it and he ended up in prison.
Right. Me too.
Aha.
It is impossible. You
Impossible.
cannot do both. If you a real gangster, now fake gangsters and rappers, they can do that. But when you a real gangster and a rapper, you can't do both, man. You going down, man. They're gonna find a way to take you down. When they know that you are a real G, bro. If these people know that you can't be both.
This is your boy DJ Slapidemics, man. I want to talk about the AR Rap situation. Real quick, I'm not gonna be too long on it because there's a guy that actually recovered the indictment paperwork, and he's just gonna read it off to you. I didn't even want to go through all of it because I'm hearing on the streets now. This how big the AR Rap situation is it's big, bro. This shit is big. You know what I'm saying? The AR Rap situation is very big. I don't even want to touch that situation, bro. But anyway, there was a guy with the educational portion of YouTube that actually found that information, and he's going to read it off to you. But one thing I want to say, man, we as black people, we have to stop getting on the internet. We have to stop getting on these phones. The same rules that apply to every other race does not apply to you. People think, in the age of the internet, you can pretty much do everything. Oh, I'm the man because I got money. People like me. No, let me tell you something. For every group of people that like you, there's a group of people that don't like you, that don't want to see you succeed. They get their rocks off by seeing you fail. They get happy by seeing you fail. They don't care if you lose your job. They don't care if you get indicted on drugs. They don't care if your kids and all of that stuff have to be kicked out on the street because you couldn't pay your rent. You got a very group of evil, satanic people out here. And one thing I want to say about AR Rab and Dark Low and all of them guys like that, they got to understand, once you get to a certain level, right? There are certain people that don't want you around them unless you have the same energy as them. OK, and you got to look at what AR Rab was doing. He was getting to the point where he was about to cross over. What I mean by that crossover, he was becoming bigger as a rapper. He was reaching, I'm not going to say all the way Jay-Z status, but he was getting to that Meek Mill level. He was getting there to the point where, more people were starting to see him. He got on bigger platforms, Power 105 Breakfast Club, you're on Vlad TV. These people, now you got more eyes looking at you. So I just want to say, man, listen, man, bottom line, once you get up to that level, a drug dealer once told me, a kingpin once told me, man, look, once you get your first million, you better start playing chess because they're coming for you. But this is your boy DJ Slapidemics, man. We got the interview of the individual who actually found the document of the 30-page document for AR App. Very, very, very deep, man. But anyway, it's a lot of people involved. And there was a lot of people that had a lot of vested interest on really taking him out of the game, which is sad. But anyway, man, I'm gone. Listen to the indictment and y'all have a good one.
What's going on, YouTube? Come back at you with another video. Okay, so I got the full indictment, AR Rab, and everybody else that was allegedly connected to this case. We're going to read the full thing. This is going to take a while. I might take breaks to take a drink of water here and there type shit. But this is 33 pages. I'm going to read 31 pages starting from the manner and means, okay? And let's start with this. It says, it was a part of that conspiracy that defendants Abdul West, Jamal Blanding, Jamil Hickson, Richard Chase Hoover, Dantes Stewart, Amir Boyer, Daryl Baker, and Hans Gadsden coordinated with each other and with others known and unknown to the grand jury. Hereinafter, this group, a drug trafficking organization, will be referred to collectively as the DTO. To obtain distribution quantities, that is, multi-kilogram quantities of various controlled substances, including methamphetamine and cocaine, from sources of supply located in California and elsewhere. At all times, Defendant West was the leader in this DTO. So they're saying ARAB was the leader in this drug trafficking organization. Defendant Abdul West owned and maintained properties in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, within which he and the DTO could gather to coordinate drug trafficking and manage their drug trafficking operation, including 3234th North Sydenham Street, Philadelphia, also known as the Mansion, and 2900 North Taylor Street, Philadelphia, also known as the Lounge. Defendant West and other members of the DTO maintained properties within which they could gather to coordinate drug trafficking and manage their drug trafficking operation, including 2323 Ray Street, Philadelphia, and 250 North Christopher Columbus Boulevard, Philadelphia. Members of the DTO used false identifications to rent apartments at 2323 Ray Street and 250 North Christopher Columbus Boulevard to prevent investigation into their backgrounds and prevent detection by law enforcement. Defendants West, Hickson, and Blanding would coordinate the delivery of various controlled substances from sources of supply in Los Angeles, California to Philadelphia. Defendants Hickson and Blanding carried money for payment and arranged for the purchase of distribution quantities of controlled substances on trips between Philadelphia and Los Angeles. Defendants Hickson and Blanding traveled via air to and from the Philadelphia International Airport to the Los Angeles International Airport to arrange for shipments of controlled substances for themselves and other members of the DTO, to negotiate price and pay for shipments of controlled substances with the source of supply in California. Hang on, let me get a drink real quick. Defendant Hoover drove his Volvo tractor from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, California, where he would coordinate with the defendants Hickson and Blanding to collect distribution quantities of controlled substances and U.S. currency and drive it back from Los Angeles to Philadelphia. Defendants West, Hickson, Blanding, Boyer, Gadsden, and Baker coordinated the arrival of controlled substances with Hoover and each other to arrange for the controlled substances to be broken down into street-level distribution quantities at properties controlled by members of the DTO, including the Mansion, 2323 Ray Street, and 250 North Columbus Boulevard. Members of the DTO pooled their money together to pay for the controlled substances and operational expenses and subsequently shared in the proceeds of drug trafficking. When shipments of controlled substances from Los Angeles included cocaine, some members of the DTO would cook a portion of the cocaine to create distribution quantities of cocaine-based crack. Defendant West established roles and responsibilities for members of the DTO, including assigning certain narcotics trafficking streams to various lieutenants who included defendants Blanding, Baker, and Boyer. Defendants West, Blanding, Stewart, Baker, Boyer, and Gadsden, as well as others known and unknown to the grand jury, distributed the controlled substances both in and around the Philadelphia area. Members of the DTO broke down kilogram quantities into smaller quantities to sell to their individual customers. They sometimes sold distribution amounts between themselves, which one of their individual customers wanted something one member of the group did not have, but another member of the group did have. Defendants Harmon and Hoover, as well as other members of the DTO, were responsible for staying with and protecting the controlled substances. The controlled substance supplies kept at the various residences owned and maintained by West and other members of the DTO. Part of my voice too, I got a cold, so bear with me. Members of the DTO kept firearms with them and at the various DTO residences to intimidate those with whom they dealt, and to protect their drug stashes and the profits derived therefrom from others who may attempt to rob them. Defendants West, Boyer, and Gadsden and other members of the DTO wrote, produced, and distributed songs via the internet and social media, which lyrics reflected their drug trafficking activities and threats of violence to others to protect and maintain their drug trafficking activities and prevent witnesses from cooperating with law enforcement. Defendants West and other members of the DTO recruited lower street-level distributors, known and unknown to the grand jury, to distribute controlled substances throughout Philadelphia and the surrounding area and return the proceeds to members of the DTO. Members of the DTO used their cellular telephones to coordinate with each other and those outside the DTO to acquire, transport, and distribute controlled substances throughout the Philadelphia and surrounding areas. The individual hereafter identified as Buyer 1, whose identity is known to the grand jury, was a confidential informant working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, posing as a private citizen interested in purchasing narcotics. The individual hereafter identified as Buyer 2, whose identity is known to the grand jury, was a confidential informant working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, posing as a private citizen interested in purchasing narcotics. Now, this is a new separate section. This is called the overt acts. In furtherance of the conspiracy and to accomplish its objects, defendants Abdul West, Jamal Blanning, Jamil Hickson, Richard Chase Hoover, Dantes Stewart, Amir Boyer, Daryl Baker, and Hads Gadsden, as well as others known and unknown to the grand jury, committed the following overt acts, among others, in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania and elsewhere. On or about March 22nd, 2017, members of the DTO rented apartment 219 at Edgewater Apartments at 2323 Ray Street using false identification in the name of Tabitha Bishop for the purpose of conducting drug trafficking activities in a high-end apartment building to protect their narcotics and prevent detection by law enforcement. On or about May 1st, 2017, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, an undercover law enforcement officer met with defendant Dantes Stewart in the area of 2000 Bridge Street, Philadelphia, who introduced himself as Taz. Stewart sold the UC 2 vials of cocaine-based crack in exchange for $20 U.S. currency and gave the UC the telephone number, and then they listed the number as a number where he could be reached. On or about June 6, 2017, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Buyer 1 placed a call to defendant Stewart on telephone number to arrange for the purchase of cocaine-based crack. Buyer traveled to 5200 Torresdale Avenue to meet defendant Stewart and discuss the arrangements for the purchase of a quarter ounce of cocaine-based crack. Defendant Stewart then drove to and entered the mansion where defendant Abdul West was also present. Defendant Stewart returned to Buyer 1, where Stewart provided approximately 6.278 grams crack or cocaine-based crack in exchange for $340 U.S. currency. On or about June 22nd, 2017, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Buyer 1 placed a call for defendant Stewart on telephone number to arrange for the purchase of cocaine-based crack. Buyer 1 met defendant Stewart at the 5200 block of Torresdale Avenue, where buyer 1 showed defendant Stewart $1,200 U.S. currency for the purchase of cocaine-based crack. Stewart returned the money to buyer 1 and left to obtain the cocaine-based crack. Defendant Abdul West drove from the mansion to the area near 444 North 3rd Street, Philadelphia, where he provided defendant Stewart with cocaine-based crack to sell buyer 1. Defendant Stewart returned to buyer 1 and sold buyer 1 approximately 24 grams of cocaine-based crack in exchange for $1,200 U.S. currency. On or about September 3rd, 2017, defendant Jamal Blanding coordinated picking up money for narcotics at the mansion from defendant Hans Gadsden. On or about September 10th, 2017, the defendants Jamal Blanding and Hans Gadsden used their cellular telephones to coordinate a drug transaction. On or about September 10th, 2017, defendants Jamal Blanding and Abdul West coordinated defendant West collecting narcotics and or U.S. currency for payment of narcotics from a stored location at the mansion. On or about September 11, 2017, defendants Abdul West, Jamal Blanding, Jamil Hickson, Richard Hoover, Dantes Stewart, Amir Boyer, Hans Gadsden, Daryl Baker, and Dennis Harmon maintained a cash house at the mansion, which included 8,101 U.S. currency, a .45 caliber firearm, and possessed with intent to distribute approximately 62 grams of a mixture and substance containing detectable amount crack cocaine or cocaine-based crack, approximately 229 grams of a mixture and a substance containing a detectable amount of heroin, and approximately 48 grams of a mixture and substance containing a detectable amount of methamphetamine. On or about September 12, 2017, defendant Jamal Blanding used his cellular telephone to update defendant Amir Boyle and other members of the DTO regarding the status of the mansion that had been searched by law enforcement on September 11, 2017. Defendant Hoover went to the mansion and used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Blanding about the status of the drugs and the currency that had been stored at the mansion. On or about September 28, 2017, defendant Blanding coordinated the collection of narcotics and or U.S. currency for payment of narcotics from defendant Jamil Hickson at 1 Brown Street, Philadelphia, then coordinate with the defendant Amir Boyle to meet defendant Blanding on his return. On or about October 19, 2017, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, buyer 1 contacted defendant Stewart by phone calls and text messages to his telephone number to arrange for the sale of cocaine-based crack, methamphetamine, and a firearm. Buyer 1 met defendant Stewart at the Dunkin' Donut at 6391 Oxford Avenue, Philadelphia, where Stewart provided buyer 1 with approximately 6.8 grams of crystal methamphetamine in exchange for 200 U.S. currency. Later that afternoon, Stewart again met with the buyer 1 at the Dunkin' Donuts at 6391 Oxford Avenue, Philadelphia, where defendant Stewart sold buyer 1 cocaine-based crack that was provided by defendant Abdul West and a .25 caliber Phoenix Arms model HP 25A firearm with the serial number in exchange for 1,450 U.S. currency for the cocaine-based crack and 450 U.S. currency for the firearm. On or about October 21st, 2017, defendants West and Blanding communicated via cellular telephone to discuss the quantity, quality, and sources of the drugs used in their drug trafficking. On or about October 31st, 2017, defendant Blanding coordinated by cellular telephone to bring U.S. currency for narcotics trafficking to defendant West at the lounge. On or about November 2nd, 2017, defendant Hoover drove his Volvo truck tractor from Philadelphia headed west towards Los Angeles, California. On or about November 9th, 2017, defendant Blanding uses his cellular telephone to request an amount of narcotics from defendant West, who agrees to provide it to him that day. On or about November 12th, 2017, defendant Hickson traveled from Philadelphia International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport. On or about November 14th, 2017, defendant Blanding traveled from Philadelphia International Airport to Los Angeles, where he was met by defendant Hickson. Defendant Blanding also sent a message to defendant Hoover advising defendant Hoover of defendant Blanding's travel arrangements and making arrangements to meet. On or about November 15, 2017, defendant Hoover, Hickson, and Blanding used their cellular telephones to coordinate meeting while in Los Angeles. Defendant Blanding also contacted defendant Baker to inform defendant Baker that defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover are in Los Angeles. On or about November 16, 2017, defendant Hoover departed from the Los Angeles area with narcotics in his Volvo truck tractor for himself and members of the DTO. Defendant Blanding communicated by telephone with defendant Abdul West to coordinate delivery of packages from Los Angeles, California to Philadelphia. On or about November 20th, 2017, defendant Hoover returned in his Volvo truck tractor to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he unloads narcotics from his Volvo truck tractor into his Chevrolet Trailblazer SUV and proceeded to deliver them to Jamil Hickson at 1 Brown Street, Philadelphia. On or about November 21st, 2017, defendant Hans Gadsden used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Abdul West about the status of the drug trafficking on that date. On or about November 27, 2017, defendants Gadsden and West used their cellular phones to discuss the status of their drug trafficking on that date. On or about November 29, 2017, defendants West and Baker discussed the status of their current and future planned drug trafficking activities and the DTO operations. On or about November 30th, 2017, defendant West used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Gadsden to direct defendant Gadsden to 2323 Ray Street, Philadelphia for drug trafficking activities. On or about December 1st, 2017, defendants Blanding and Baker had a telephone conversation to discuss their current and future planned drug trafficking activities and DTO operations. On or about December 5th, 2017, defendants West and Baker had a telephone conversation to arrange drug trafficking on that date with members of the DTO. Let me get a drink real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay. On or about December 8th, 2017, defendants Blandon and Boyer communicated via cellular telephone about payment of rent for the apartment in the name Tabitha Bishop. On or about December 12th, 2017, defendant Hoover left Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor, headed west towards Los Angeles, California, where he arrived on December 15th, 2017. On or about December 16, 2017, defendants Hickson and Blanding communicated with each other via cellular telephone before they departed from Philadelphia International Airport and arrived at Los Angeles International Airport. Defendants Hickson and Blanding communicated with each other again to coordinate upon arrival in Los Angeles. On or about December 16, 2017, defendant Blanding communicated with defendant Baker to discuss defendant Blanding's activities in Los Angeles with other members of the DTO. On or about December 17, 2017, defendants West, Blanding, Hoover, and Boyer coordinated with each other via cellular telephone to pool money to purchase narcotics. On or about December 18, 2017, defendants West and Baker had a telephone conversation to discuss drug trafficking On or about December 19, 2017, defendants Blanding and Hickson coordinated drug trafficking activities via their cellular telephones while in Los Angeles. On or about December 20th, 2017, defendants West and Blanding used their cellular telephones to communicate about getting a sample of drugs to test the quality from a source in New York. On or about December 21st, 2017, defendants Blanding and Hickson arranged to meet at the lounge. On or about December 22nd, 2017, defendant Hoover returned to Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor and unloaded narcotics into his Chevrolet Trailblazer, which he then drove to 2323 Ray Street, Philadelphia. Defendant Hoover delivered the narcotics to defendant West at 2323 Ray Street. On or about December 23rd, 2017 through January 18, 2018 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, defendant West, using cellular telephone, coordinated sales of cocaine-based crack with defendant Gadsden using cellular telephone, including communicating drug amounts remaining and picking up narcotics from 2323 Ray Street. On or about December 28, 2017, defendants West and Baker had a telephone conversation to discuss drug trafficking and DTO operations. On or about January 1st, 2018, defendants West and Baker had a telephone conversation to discuss drug trafficking operations, and the roles of members in the DTO. On or about January 4th, 2018, defendants West and Blanding used their cellular telephones to coordinate members of the DTO bringing drugs from 2323 Ray Street and the delivery of drugs to DTO customers. On or about January 6, 2018, defendants West and Baker had a telephone conversation to discuss drug trafficking operations, and the roles of members in the DTO. On or about January 8, 2018, defendant West communicated with defendant Hoover. The defendant Hoover can move into the apartment at 2323 Ray Street and can get the key to the apartment from defendant Boyer. On or about January 10, 2018, defendant West communicated with defendant Hoover that defendant Hoover should return the key to apartment 2323 Ray Street to defendant Boyer when defendant Hoover goes out of town. On or about January 19, 2018, defendant Hoover left Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor headed west towards Los Angeles, California. On or about January 24, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson traveled on a flight together from Philadelphia International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport. Defendant Blanding communicated with defendant Hoover when defendant Blanding and Hickson arrived in Los Angeles, and defendant Blanding coordinated with defendant Hoover to meet with defendant Blanding and Hickson. On or about January 25th, 2018, defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover coordinated transportation and traveled together while in Los Angeles and stored U.S. currency in their rental car used in Los Angeles. Defendants Blanding and Hickson coordinated collecting narcotics for the DTO using their cellular telephones. On or about January 26, 2018, defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover stored narcotics and or U.S. currency in their hotel room and transported narcotics in a rental car in Los Angeles. Defendants Blanding and Hickson communicated via cellular telephones to ensure that the packages of narcotics and or U.S. currency are hidden from hotel housekeeping to prevent detection. On or about January 27, 2018, defendant Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to coordinate meetings. On or about January 28, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson returned to Philadelphia. On or about January 31st, 2018, the defendant Hoover returned to Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor and unloaded narcotics into his Chevrolet Trailblazer, which he then drove to 2323 Ray Street, Philadelphia. Defendant Hoover delivered the narcotics to defendant West at 2323 Ray Street, where defendants Gadsden and Baker were awaiting the delivery. On or about January 31st, 2018, defendant Gadsden used their cellular telephone to communicate with defendant West about traveling to 2323 Ray Street. Hold on, I skipped a little piece here. Let me go back. On or about February 2nd, 2018, defendant Hickson used his cellular telephone to inform defendants West and Blanding that all narcotics arrived in Philadelphia on that date. On or about February 2nd, 2018, defendants Hoover and Blanding used their cellular telephones to communicate about paying defendant Hoover for delivering narcotics. On or about February 3rd, 2018, defendant Gadsden communicated with defendant West about the status of their drug trafficking. On or about February 4th, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson met at the apartment at 2323 Ray Street. On or about February 5th, 2018, defendants West and Gadsden communicated via their cellular telephones about the status of their drug trafficking activities, as well as securing and storing narcotics at the mansion. On or about February 6, 2018, defendants Hoover and Blanding coordinated payment of rent at the apartment 2323 Ray Street. On or about February 7, 2018, defendant Blanding used his cellular telephone to advise defendants West, Hickson, and Boyer how to delete data from their cellular telephones to prevent detection by law enforcement. On or about February 10, 2018, defendant West used his cellular telephone to request defendant Blanding provide him with keys to 2323 Ray Street left by defendant Hoover. On or about February 15, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson communicated using their cellular telephones about payment for and or proceeds of drug trafficking. On or about February 16, 2018, defendants West and Gadsden communicated using their cellular telephones about their drug trafficking activities. On or about February 20th, 2018, defendant Hoover left Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor headed west towards Los Angeles, California. Defendant Hoover communicated with defendant West about the location where defendant Hoover stores his Volvo truck tractor. On or about February 23rd, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson traveled from Philadelphia International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport and then traveled to Las Vegas, Nevada. On or about February 25th, 2018, defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover met together in Los Angeles, California. On or about February 25th, defendant Hickson used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendants West and Boyer about drug trafficking opportunities in California. On or about February 26, 2018, defendants West and Blanding used their cellular telephones to arrange to ship a package via FedEx from Los Angeles to the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. On or about February 27, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to communicate about drug trafficking and a source of supply to the DTO in New York. On or about February 28, 2018, defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover used their cellular telephones to communicate with one another about paying for narcotics in Los Angeles. On or about February 28, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to communicate about meeting at defendant Hickson's residence. On or about March 1st, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to coordinate future drug trafficking activities in California and the status of their current drug trafficking. On or about March 3rd, 2018, defendant Blanding used his cellular telephone to send defendant Hickson information on a FedEx package and a UPS package sent from Los Angeles to Philadelphia area while defendants Blanding and Hickson were in Los Angeles. On or about March 4th, 2018, defendant Hoover returned to Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor and contacted defendant Hickson on his cellular telephone number. After defendant Hoover had parked his Volvo truck tractor, defendants Blanding and West met defendant Hoover at the Volvo truck tractor with defendant Hoover's Chevrolet Trailblazer. Defendant Hoover transferred narcotics from the Volvo truck tractor into the Chevrolet Trailblazer and along with defendants West and Blanding traveled to 2323 Ray Street. Defendant Hoover then delivered the narcotics to defendants West and Blanding at 2323 Ray Street. Defendant Gadsden arrived at 2323 Ray Street shortly thereafter. On or about March 4, 2018, defendants West and Blanding used their cellular telephones to coordinate picking defendant Hoover up at a location where defendant Hoover's Volvo truck tractor arrived. On or about March 6, 2018, defendant Boyer communicated with management at 2323 Ray Street that he is subletting apartment 219. On or about March 8, 2018, defendant Hickson traveled to the Dominican Republic. On or about March 9, 2018, defendant Hickson used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Blanding about sending money to the defendant Hickson in the Dominican Republic via Western Union. On or about March 10, 2018, defendants West, Blanding, and Hickson used their cellular telephones to coordinate payment to defendant Hoover for his transportation work. On or about March 14, 2018, defendants West and Baker used their cellular telephones to discuss drug trafficking activities, the quality of their product, and the DTO operations. On or about March 17, 2018, defendants Blandon and Hickson used their cellular telephones to coordinate their next trip to Los Angeles, California. On or about March 17, 2018, defendants West and Gadsden used their cellular telephones to coordinate drug sales to customers, to supply other members of the DTO, and to meet at 2323 Ray Street. On or about March 25, 2018, defendants Blanding and Gadsden used their cellular telephones to coordinate a drug transaction at the lounge. On or about March 27, 2018, defendant Hoover left Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor headed west towards Los Angeles, California. On or about March 30th, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson traveled from Philadelphia to Las Vegas, Nevada, then on to Los Angeles, California. On or about March 30th, 2018, defendant Boyer used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Blanding about money and an apartment key for 2323 Ray Street. On or about March 31st, 2018, defendant West used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Blanding about drug trafficking activity in Los Angeles. On or about April 1st, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to communicate about drug trafficking activities in Los Angeles. On or about April 1st, 2018, defendants Blanding and Gadsden used their cellular telephones to communicate about defendant Blanding providing drugs for defendant Gadsden to sell when defendant Blanding returns from Los Angeles. On or about April 2nd, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to communicate with each other about contacting their drug source in Los Angeles and methods of shipping narcotics from Los Angeles to Philadelphia. On or about April 9th, 2018, defendant Hoover returned to Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor. Defendants West and Blanding drove to meet defendant Hoover at the location of his Volvo truck tractor, where defendant Hoover transferred narcotics from the Volvo truck tractor into a West vehicle. Defendants West, Blanding, and Hoover then traveled to 2323 Ray Street, where the narcotics were unloaded from West's car and brought into 2323 Ray Street. On or about April 11, 2018, defendant West used his cellular telephone to communicate with defendants Blanding, Baker, and Boyer about staying in their respective roles that defendant West established for them in the DTO and forbidding them from getting drugs directly from defendant Hickson. On or about April 13, 2018, defendants West, Blanding, and Hoover used their cellular telephones to coordinate renting an apartment at 1 Water Street, Philadelphia, payment for which would be made through defendant Hickson. Defendant West provided bank account information to defendant Blanding to pay for the new apartment. On or about April 14, 2018, defendant West used a cellular telephone to coordinate payment of a deposit for the apartment at 1 Water Street with defendant Blanding and Hoover, to associates of defendant Hickson. Defendant Hoover provided information to West and Blanding confirming defendant Hoover's payment for the apartment and communicated to defendant West that defendant Hoover had provided the key to 2323 Ray Street to defendant Boyer. On or about April 15, 2018, defendant Gadsden used his cellular telephone to coordinate getting cocaine-based crack from defendant Blanding at the lounge. On or about April 17, 2018, defendants Blanding and Gadsden coordinate providing methamphetamine to a customer of the DTO. On or about April 20th, 2018, defendants Hoover and Blanding used their cellular telephones to coordinate defendant Hoover picking up the keys to the apartment at 1 Water Street. On or about April 23rd, 2018, defendant West used his cellular telephone to provide a customer of the DTO the contact information for defendant Baker to complete the sale of narcotics. On or about April 27, 2018, defendant Hoover used his cellular telephone to provide bank information for the rental of 1 Water Street apartment to defendant Blanding. Defendant Blanding then used his cellular telephone to provide payment confirmation to defendant Hickson. On or about April 30th, 2018, defendants West and Blanding used their cellular telephones to communicate about a bag of money from defendant Hickson that was intended for West. On or about May 1st, 2018, defendant Blanding used his cellular telephone to request defendant Hoover to get defendant Blanding some money and meet at the lounge. On or about May 2nd, 2018, defendant Hoover took possession of the keys to apartment 717 of the 1 Water Street apartments, 250 North Christopher Columbus Boulevard in Pennsylvania. Members of the DTO had rented this apartment using false identification of D'Angelo Smith for purpose of conducting drug trafficking activities in a manner to protect their narcotics and prevent detection by law enforcement. On or about May 3rd, 2018, defendant Blanding used his cellular telephone to request that defendant Hoover make a copy of the key to 1 Water Street apartment. On or about May 3rd, 2018, defendant West used his cellular telephone to provide the contact information for defendant Baker to a customer of the DTO to arrange for a drug transaction. On or about May 4th, 2018, defendant Hoover left Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor headed west towards Los Angeles, California. On or about May 5th, 2018, defendant Hickson and Blanding communicated with defendant Hickson's source for providing defendant Blanding with a false identification in the name of D'Angelo Smith, the name that was used by the DTO to rent the apartment at 1 Water Street. On or about May 9th, 2018, defendants Blanding and Hickson traveled from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, California. On or about May 10th, 2018, the defendants Blanding, Hickson, and Hoover met together in Los Angeles. On or about May 11, 2018, defendant Hoover met with defendant Hickson, loaded concealed narcotics into his Volvo truck tractor, and proceeded to travel east back to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On or about May 16, 2018, defendant Blanding used his cellular telephone to contact defendant Hoover, who was driving back to Philadelphia, to inform defendant Hoover that defendants Blanding and Hickson were together and to contact defendant Hickson. On or about May 16, 2018, defendants West and Hickson communicated through their cellular telephones about them meeting with the source of supply on the following Saturday. On or about May 16, 2018, the defendant Hoover returned to Philadelphia in his Volvo truck tractor. Defendant Hoover then transferred concealed narcotics and U.S. currency from the Volvo truck tractor into his Chevrolet Trailblazer and drove to 250 North Christopher Columbus Boulevard. Defendant Blanding met defendant Hoover at 250 North Christopher Columbus Boulevard using a key. Defendant Blanding opened the door to apartment 717 to admit himself and defendant Hoover, who was transporting approximately 10,004 grams of cocaine, 2,671 grams of methamphetamine, and 20,000 in U.S. currency. On or about May 17, 2018, Defendants Blanding and Hickson used their cellular telephones to coordinate meeting with defendant Hoover in the morning. On or about May 17, 2018, defendant Blanding learned that law enforcement had seized the drug stored at 1 Water Street and contacted defendants West, Hickson, and Boyer. On or about May 17, 2018, defendant Hickson traveled to the Dominican Republic. On or about May 20th, 2018, defendant Hickson used a cellular telephone to communicate with defendant West about the drug seizure from 1 Water Street. On or about May 21st, 2018, defendant Hickson used a cellular telephone to communicate with defendant Blanding about the drug seizure from 1 Water Street. On or about June 12, 2018, defendant Hickson traveled from Philadelphia International Airport to Los Angeles, California, all in violation of Title 21, United States Code, Section 846. So this then goes into count 2. It names everybody. It says knowingly and intentionally possessed with intent to distribute, aided and abetted the possession with intent to distribute of 28 grams or more, that is approximately 62 grams of a mixture in substance containing detectable amount of cocaine-based crack, Schedule 2 controlled substance, 100 grams or more, that is approximately 229 grams of a mixture and a substance containing a detectable amount of heroin, a Schedule 1 controlled substance, and approximately 48 grams of a mixture and substance containing a detectable amount of methamphetamine, a Schedule 2 controlled substance. In violation of Title 21, United States Code, Section 841, A1, B1, B, B1C, and Title 18, United States Code, Section 2. So let's go to the next one now. This is count 3. This is claiming that Abdul West, which is Arab, and Dantes Stewart, Taz, knowingly and intentionally distributed and aided and abetted the distribution of 5 grams or more, that is 6.8 grams of methamphetamine, a Schedule 2 controlled substance, in violation Title 21, United States Code, Section 841, A1, B1, B, and Title 18, United States Code, Section 2. This is count 4. This is saying the grand jury further charges that on October 19, 2017, Philadelphia in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, defendant Dantes Stewart, aka Taz, having been convicted in a court of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding. Number 2, I think it's important that we talk about this real quick. Now, I'm not saying that in this case that that's what happened, because this is all just allegations. None of this stuff that's been presented right now is actual facts. It's just what the feds are alleging happened. But it's important for anybody else out there, just a general rule that you always want to remember: don't be on the phone talking about things that could get you incriminated. The feds aren't able to get into conversations if they wanted to very easily and without having to obtain search warrants and shit like that. Believe it or not, but when you sign up with these smartphones, a lot of the shit that you sign up for is allowing them access to your phone. Every time you download an app, you allow it access to all different kinds of parts of your phone. So just remember that in this day and age, everything is being watched, everything's being monitored, everything's being recorded. So if you're doing anything illegal, definitely don't do it on the phone. And don't do anything on social media either. Social media did not play any role in this at this point that we know of, but social media in general is not the place where you want to be sharing details about crimes that you commit in life. So just keep that in mind the next time you get on your phone and you start talking about some illegal shit, or you hop on social media and start telling people about shit that you did. At the end of the day, this shit is all accessible by the feds. Everything's being tracked, traced, databased, all of that shit. So be careful how you